I'm very kind of fun and colourful. So my style of work led me into advertising. So I do a lot of beauty, and with that, I do some fashion editorial, which is fun. And the portraits are really good for kind of working with celebrities because it makes sense being in LA. Like, it's Hollywood. Everyone's here. Like, everyone lives here. Everyone is working here. So if you can get a few good portraits in your book and then start to like pitch that to celebrities, then you're winning.
Hello and welcome to Creativity for Sale podcast, a show to help you start and grow your life-changing creative career and business. My name is Radim Malinic and creativity changed my life. You see, I believe creativity can change your life too. I even wrote a book about it and it inspired this podcast. I've set out to interview the world's most brilliant creatives, designers, writers, musicians, makers and marketeers about their life-changing experiences with creativity. If you ever wanted to know how people go from their humble beginnings to the pinnacle of their success, our conversation should provide you with an intimate look into triumphs, challenges and untold stories behind their creative endeavors. We also discuss the highs and lows of creative careers and creative life. So, thank you for joining me on this exploration of passion, creativity, innovation and the boundless potential within us all. Let creativity change your life. Are you ready? Hey Natalie, welcome to the show. It's really actually a pleasure to have you here because after we've just been reminiscing before the recording, we've known each other for 15 years.
Yeah, I had no idea it was so long. It feels like we've known each other maybe 3 or 4 years. But yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited.
To people who never heard of us, they'd be like, what are they talking about? How long they've known each other? It doesn't have anything to do with me. But the reason why I want to talk to you about how long we've known each other and the work we've done in the past is because halfway through our work in friendship, you have upped your sticks and went from London all the way to LA to rebuild your career. What was the move? Why did you move?
So, a very interesting story. I never really had any kind of dreams or ambitions to live in America. You know, I already lived in the best city in the world, which is London. Everyone flocks to London. All my friends were from all over the world. I was like, I don't need to go anywhere. Everyone comes to London. So the move it was very all last minute. So I was working as a photographer's assistant, as a digital technician, and slowly building my career on the side as well, and had switched from shooting music, doing music videos, producing music videos, just everything within the career, within the industry, sorry. And one day I don't know, I just heard this voice say, pack your bags, you're going to move to LA. I'd never been to LA before, but I had just come off a 2-week job in Miami as an assistant and drove up to see a couple of friends of mine and was like, oh, this is what I need. But I didn't know what this was until when I got back to London. And then somehow it was just like, go to LA. And I was just like, okay. And then a few friends of mine, they were like, Nat, you've never been to LA. What are you doing? I'm like, I'm just going to go and see what happens. It's fine. And they were like, okay, well, let's take a holiday, see if you actually like it. And I was like, there's no need, guys. I've already made my mind up. I'm just going to go. Fast forward, I had decided in March. And then by the November, I was here in LA and got a tourist visa, was out here for 6 months, didn't know anyone, didn't have a job, didn't have a working visa, no friends. I think I had 2 friends. One that had just moved from New York and had only been in LA for 6 months, so was still new. And then another friend who was, married with kids and everything. So didn't really have time to help me settle on anything. So I don't know, found my feet just by everyone in the UK saying, oh, I've got friends in LA, go and meet this person, go and meet this person. So I made a list of everyone that everyone else told me to meet. And then somehow I just kept meeting more and more people.
So you said you left the best city in the world, which is everyone flocks to London, and that's my reason why I'm here. It's quite a bold move for moving to somewhere that you've never been to, never had any contacts. Obviously, I can attest to it. This is exactly what I've done in, some 24 years ago. But if you have listened to this podcast, you hear me talking about 24 years ago for every episode. So I'll stop that because I'm intrigued, because it's that courage. And I think the conversation I want to have today is about rebuilding your career and kind of literally starting afresh, because I think we can be easily comfortable with where we are and like having the network around us and having everyone for everything. You can pick up a phone and just speak to anyone, have problem solved with anywhere. And when it comes to not only rebuilding that sort of friendship network and a sort of contact network, rebuilding your career is quite daunting. So you moved to LA, you didn't know anyone, you just got some contact, and you would try to launch your career as a photographer for the second time. So how did you get on with getting work? How did that start?
With my tourist visa, it's only eligible for 6 months and you're not able to work. So you're not allowed to take on any paid jobs. And so I was like, okay, well, 6 months is enough time for me to A, figure out if I like it, B, figure out how to get a sponsor, to get a working visa, and C, are there enough contacts out here? So during that time, I just went onto a couple of Facebook groups, went onto Eventbrite. I just tried to go to as many events as possible, meet people, and I just offered my services out for nothing. There's actually a really good support group here called Brits in LA. So I would go to that networking breakfast every Tuesday, like clockwork, because you just never know who you're going to meet. And a good friend of mine said, Nat, don't worry, just don't say no to anything, just say yes to everything. So I basically said yes to everything and just tried to get myself out there. But I think the best thing that I did was to just start doing test shoots and building a team and finding good people. And literally by offering myself up just to collaborate with makeup artists, hairstylists, wardrobe stylists, I was able to start building a nice network. And those people then referred me to other people. So I was actually able to get paid work once my visa was approved. I remember at the time I had people saying, "Oh, how do I pay you for this?" I'm like, you can't. Just cover the expenses because I'm legally not allowed to take any form of payment. So if you want to cover the expenses for the shoot, at least I'm not out of pocket. So yeah, that's pretty much how it started. And literally, I think just by the good grace of people and word of mouth, that I was able to start building some contacts and some relationships.
I think, yeah, it's quite clear that your style and your work, from my experience, obviously knowing your work, because we've done various projects together from various experiments, trying to throw things in the air, photograph them, and scouting for models and fashion designers and makers. And I mean, it was quite fun to try to do all of that. But I felt like instantly that when I've seen your latest work, your work from that time when you moved, it just felt elevated. It felt American. It felt a bit different, and it felt not just one or two, well, too many levels up. Like you just instantly improved. And I think at that time he told me like, "Oh, it's the sunshine. The sunshine's good in here. The work is nicer because you don't get the weather in London." I admire that you said that. So you went to every networking breakfast and you said yes to everything, because that's definitely one of the recipes on getting known and getting out there. But did you feel, I mean, I know you're quite outgoing person, but did you ever feel intimidated by the new environment and like doing it all again?
Not really. I think just because I was actually really unhappy in London and the weather, yeah, did play on my mind, but as well, like the industry is very close knit. If you don't already know someone, it's very hard to get to know anyone. And in America, I mean, LA and New York are very, very different. So when I'm in New York, I have contacts there and they're more willing to like get me on board on things. But LA, it just takes a bit longer because there's trust issues, which I understand now being in the industry in LA, because people talk a lot of nonsense and they say things and then they don't deliver and it's very stressful. In terms of finding people to speak to, I didn't find it that difficult. I just was like, ever since I got to America, I've always just been on this countdown. So I get my visa and it runs out in 6 months. So I'm counting down the days until I have to deliver all this information to then apply for a working visa. Once my working visa was approved, I panicked again slightly. I was just like, oh crap, I've got 3 years to either do something really amazing or just keep doing what I'm doing. So I'm on this constant countdown. And even now, I just spoke to my attorney today, like I've got to renew another year on my current visa while I wait for my green card. So immigration weighs a lot on my mind in terms of I have to juggle that with work. It's not like I've just woken up and I could just concentrate on work. I have to think about every job that I'm doing. Will this look good on my visa? Can I use this to elevate myself and to show that I'm worthy of being here?
So satisfy my curiosity because obviously I was in your position in this country, in England, but I didn't have to do zilch compared to what you had to do. Like originally I had to have like a self-employed visas and then business visas, but it was more about paying a lawyer to make a case study or whatever. And they're like, yeah, that you're approved because that's how it worked, years ago. But tell me about, so you're talking about the visa structure, talking about that for a second. What do you have to do to get approved? Like who decides, hey, what would you decide, what would you put in your application and who then judges it? Because it seems to be like a bit of an X factor for creativity and immigration, really. How does it work?
Yeah, it is like X Factor. So I have to put a case together because of the type of visa that I'm on. I'm on an O1 visa, which is the official name is Alien of Extraordinary Ability. So if you have a really good talent in art, science, or sport, I think, then you have to show why you're so good and why your sponsor needs you to be here. So I had to, luckily, a friend of mine, way back when I was shooting music, he told me, oh, anytime you're published in a magazine or newspaper, just scan or save that cutting. And I was like, okay. I didn't really understand it at the time, why I needed to keep all these magazines and newspapers. But before I left London, I scanned everything in. And that was my saving grace because I was able to use that as part of my portfolio to put forward to the US government to be like, hey, I'm really good at what I do. So yeah, I found the process really easy, but I think it's just because I was meant to be here. I don't know. I just believe in weird, like, you just follow the path that the universe tells you to go down. But the OM visa is actually a really difficult visa to get. So you have to, have a sponsor, someone that's like your agent to say, hey, I really need this talent and here's why I need her. Then I have to have 10 to 12 letters of recommendation. I think you wrote one for me in my original visa to say how we know each other and how you know me professionally in my career and everything else. And then I need like deal memos. So I need like people to say, yeah, we want to book her, but we can't book her until you give her the visa. So this is what we plan to pay her. So you need deal memos and then you need a portfolio.
Wow. I feel like we're only like a 1/11th of the whole answer in, because that seems like there's a lot of paperwork to do all of this. And how do you find, because I've got no experience with this, like how do you find the efficiency of the process? Like, does your attorney like handle all of this, or how much extra work do you have to put in yourself to make sure that it gets seen, processed, judged by Simon Cowell, since we talk about X Factor? How does it work and how quick is it?
I have to do quite a lot of the work. So I have to gather all the letters. I have to know all these people and then I have to put my portfolio together. So I very haphazardly just chucked everything into Adobe Acrobat and organized the pages and put press and then put exhibition, the award, like all the things that, is needed. The key to it all is to have a really good attorney. And my attorney has literally, I don't know, like saved my life in a way because I was just so unhappy in London. And now through the power of my attorney helping me through this whole process and literally holding my hand every step of the way has made it A, less painful and B, doable. Yeah, if you don't have a good attorney, you will scratch your eyes out. It's painful.
That's amazing. So I guess you need an attorney, good attorney, and a good lawyer and good accountant. That's three things in business that you always need. That's for sure. So good luck with it all. I mean, it's been great to watch that journey, and think if anyone follows the conversation, oh my God, if I want to move to America, that seems like a lot of work just to make the basics. But let's talk about what your passion drove you to get there, which is photography. Did you have stylistically any idea what you were going into? Did you have any sort of stylistic plans? What you're going to shoot? Or because I know your forte is fashion, beauty, portrait. Do I have it right? You see, my research in my brain is perfect. So what was the plan? Did you have anything in particular that you wanted to achieve? Right, okay, I'm going to LA. I'm going to shoot. I mean, I'm sure your initial work when you did everything for free was a little bit, I think you showed some famous people, and tell us the beginnings and style.
As I'm getting to know a lot of people, because my background is in music, I had a lot of people refer me to music people out in LA. So I actually photographed one of Neo's babies. I can't remember which one. I don't know how many kids they have now. But yeah, his wife had just had one of their babies, and so I went to their house. It was really, really bizarre. I got picked up in this big, massive suburban SUV, and with all my equipment, and I was like, I can't just. I have a car. I can just drive there, but they insisted on coming to get me, loading all my stuff into the car, and then going to her house and setting up and everything else. And yeah, that was one of my first jobs out here. But in terms of like my kind of visual direction, I don't really know how it came about. I was just open to any and every idea, and I would just collaborate and experiment and try to learn the US market because it's very different from the UK and Europe. I knew I didn't really want to go into high fashion, and I realized it, as much as I wanted to, I was just like, I'm not a fashionable person. Like I have a little bit of fashion sense, but it's more commercial, cheesy fashion than it is high fashion. So you know how when you see someone on the tube and you're just like, oh yeah, if they work in fashion, you can tell straight away. That's not me. So I just accepted that and was like, what am I? And I was like, well, I'm very commercial. I'm very like fun and colorful. So my style of work led me into advertising. So I do a lot of beauty, and with that, I do some fashion editorial, which is fun. And the portraits are really good for kind of working with celebrities because it makes sense being in LA. Like it's Hollywood. Everyone's here. Like everyone lives here. Everyone is working here. So if you can get a few good portraits in your book and then start to like pitch that to celebrities, then yeah, you're winning.
Am I right to remember your drunken story with Gerard Butler? Is that something is that you? I mean, speaking of famous people, I just somehow remember like a message, like there's Gerard Butler in my bar. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. So, okay, don't ever let me near celebrities after I've had a drink because I will treat them like they're my best friends and just start talking to them about absolute nonsense. So, me and my friend was in a bar and he goes, Nat, don't look now. There's Gerard Butler. And I was just like, what? Okay. And then as we're walking out, he's walking out as well. And I notice he has a motorcycle helmet in his hand. And I was just like, oh, are you about to get on your bike? And he was just like, yeah. I was like, are you sure? Because you've had a few drinks. I hope it's safe. Be safe. And then I went off on a completely different tangent about how I had a Vespa and how one day I was driving through Clapham and this police car almost knocked me off. I was telling him the whole story and he was just looking at me like, who is this girl? Like, what is she on? But yeah, that's one of them. Another one was I was coming from a listening party, going to another party. And as the Uber pulled up to the hotel, I saw LL Cool J. I didn't even wait for the Uber to stop. I jumped out the car and I was like, Uncle L, Uncle L, can we get a selfie? And he was just like, yeah, sure. And then I proceeded to kind of try and lure him into the party I was going to. And he was just like, I have no idea who you are. I was just like, and he's like, who? It was my friend Steve's party. He's like, who's Steve? I was like, you know who Steve is. I was drunk. And just as I'm talking to him, he's backing away.
I was going to say that sounds like a perfect, like a few drinks conversation like this. When you replay the next morning going, right. But let me take it back because I just somehow that glimpse of the memory, so there's no flash through my mind. So we were talking about sort of portraiture, like doing portraits of famous people and style. And as I said a few minutes ago, like your photography just got that burst of color, that burst of energy, like right away. And it looked American almost. Of course, there was your little sort of signature style in it, but it was just like, oh my God, this is what you needed for your career to do. So When you started putting your team together, were there any sort of cultural differences? Did you find people easy to work with, or like did you find that actually people were even more excited and more eager to help with stuff? Because I remember from the shoots that you and I did, like when we had some people who came to help us for free, sometimes they were quite hard going. I never felt like everyone was there to change their life and go like, hey, look, this is my opportunity to actually know someone and do something else or use this as a prop to somewhere. So how was the energy of the new team and like their skills, and how quickly did you learn from them? How did it add it to your work?
The energy out here is so different. Like everybody wants to do something and everyone wants to be somebody, and everybody is not sure who is going to become somebody. Because there's this air of uncertainty and the unknown, everyone puts in a lot more effort and everyone really gets excited about everything that's going on and everything that we're doing. And I'm still doing like all my mood boards, and I'll pitch it to a few members of makeup teams and hairstylists that I work with, say, hey, like I've got this idea. Do you want to try and bring this to life? And 9 out of 10 times, everyone's like, yes, please, absolutely. And if I think back to my first encounter, one of the makeup artists I work with, who I still work with now, he saw my Facebook post and was just like, oh, wow, yeah, I need to get on her radar ASAP because she's going to go somewhere and I want to be on that journey with her. And like, she's been with me from the beginning. And anytime I have an opportunity to get her on a commercial or anything, I'm like, hey, listen, I've got this paid gig for you. And it's really nice when you can support the people that have been there for you from the beginning. And even people that haven't been there from the beginning, anyone that's like willing to help, I'll always remember, because it's not easy juggling immigration and a career and trying to stand out above 1,500 other photographers that do the same thing.
Did you find with the people that offered to work with you, did you feel like you had to vet their skills? Like, was there anyone who like wasn't up to scratch, or did you like, if you say like it's such a melting point where everyone's really excited, kind of just waiting when they get a break, when they become famous, like when the next thing will happen for them? Is everyone okay? Like, did you find the standard of the talent and the skills like adequate for that sort of drive?
Yes, you can notice it very quite quickly. You can see just in someone's work and also in the way that they respond to you. So when I put out my initial, hey, I'm new to LA and this is what I want to do, it was the people that contacted me more than twice, or at least twice, that I knew were serious. Because I get so many requests even now on my Instagram and whatever. And it's like, hey, I love your work. We should do something. I'm like, okay, yeah, what do you want to do? Like, you got to come with something. You can't just be like, yeah, let's do something and then expect me to be the driving force behind it. And unless it's my idea, then I'm not really going to respond in the same way. But it's like when I have an idea, I will present it like I'm doing a presentation, like, hey, I've got this idea. This is what it looks like. I think I can get this model. I think we can be in this magazine. I'm putting a whole package together. So it's the people that kind of resonate with my kind of work ethic that I will then respond to. But if you're just going to be like, hey, yeah, let's do something, I'm like, sure, but no.
So I think that's a really good, interesting point where you said like the people who responded or like responding more than once, more than twice. And I think that really shows that people want it, because I remember having people on the team before who've sent 6, 7 emails. They're like, hey, I'm interested. Let's have a conversation. What do you think? Have you got something for me? And I think that's such a valuable takeaway, because that's somehow like you and I got our gigs before, like how we got to work with people like, hey, I'm still here. Do you need me? That kind of stuff. And it's definitely helpful to be in people's minds, because I heard somewhere someone's technique that they say like they've got like a 3 different lists of people that they respond to, like, or they sort of get in touch. So like you've got a group that you email every month, like, okay, I'm here, this is what I'm doing, what you're doing now. Like you keep active conversation. And you got people like the second group that email them like every 3 months to 6 months, like, hey, I've seen what you're doing, that kind of stuff. And then the group C, which is like now and then, like you see, like you keep an eye on them. And I think it's really important that you show that tenacity, you show that drive, and you show that willingness that you want to do something, because it's quite easy to actually be on the internet and go, you should pay me £10,000 for waking up because that's what I believe I'm worth. I don't know who you are. Like, what do you want going on? And yeah, this kind of like this sort of shout out. And shout out on Instagram or Twitter or LinkedIn, like, hey, I'm looking for a photographer. And then, oh, my friend is a photographer. And then just they tag their friend Barry that sort of took 5 pictures. And Barry goes, yeah, I'll give it a go. And you're like, how did we end up with such system where somehow people think that because someone tagged them, they'll get a job? And sometimes someone tagged us in a pile of comments on Twitter and in LinkedIn, and it just never goes anywhere because you want to find a way how not to be in that space. Like how, okay, this person's got a problem. I need to find a way how to speak to them about a problem without having a punch up in the comment section, which is, it's always going to go to a mate of a mate. Like it's never going to go. That's kind of what I asked because I wanted to know and kind of share through these conversations, like what was the little tricks and tips that made it work. And you said it really well, like, don't make me be the driver of this idea. Like, no, hey, we should do something together. Like, I think it's always important to show like, what's your value? Like, hey, I can help you with this, or this is my idea. And I don't think there's ever a negative price for being too excited, because what you've described all the way up though in the last 20 odd minutes is that I was happy to do this. You know, you projected your energy, like you said, okay, I believe I need to be here. And I think if it was similar for you as it was for me, like my first 2 years in England was like a never ending holiday. Everything sounded amazing. Everything tasted amazing. Everything sounded great. It's just like when you're on holiday, like you leave the sort of everything behind. And I think it's just like moving to another place. It just makes you excited. And I was like, yeah, what can I do? What can I help with? Like you want to find your purpose. Yeah, having those people who are keen and interested, I think you can quickly see through it. So going after what you want, it's always really good. So you build your teams, you got a team and, you got sort of preferable group of people and you started shooting stuff. So we established that obviously you needed 6 months of not being paid, but try and do things. So after that, obviously you got picked up in a suburban SUV, as you call it. It sounds very big as a car. Yeah. Where'd you go next? What do you do? Like, how does it snowball from there?
That's a really weird, hard one to answer because there was a period of burnout that I got, and I just took some part-time work just to cover some bills, and I had to regroup because I went out of my way to meet everyone, see everything, do everything. You get a bit burnt out trying to do it all. I think it was 2018. I just didn't put any pressure on myself. I just did the basics. I was really lucky enough to partner with a body parts modeling agency, and I go in and I shoot their comp cards for them, and then the models pay me, and then they get assigned to the agency, and then you know that's consistent work. So it's somewhat creative, as in I try to make it as creative as possible. But after you shot 50 or 60 hands, you're like, okay, well, what else can we do in the short space of time that we have with no assistant, no set, minimal lighting? So I kind of took some time out to regroup and just think about doing jobs not just for money and just really focusing on what I want to do. And then that came around the same time as I got my agent. And everyone always asks, like, oh, I really need an agent. How do you get one? I think in this day and age, not everyone needs an agent. So I got one because I wanted to understand the American market more. She's obviously American, so was able to help me navigate that. Whereas if I was already here and established, I probably would just have a bunch of producers and I would still go out and make my contacts. So going from just getting by on some free work into actually building a career out here has been being part of certain photography groups and speaking with other photographers, getting to know the market, speaking with art buyers and creative directors, getting into some directories so that people can see my name, go into portfolio reviews. That's a big one for me because I feel like I get booked more once I've met someone. So it's a case of, yeah, you can see an email come in, but I always try to meet them in person, even if it's just for a quick 10-minute coffee or something, because I find I get a better connection when I see someone in person. So yeah, I think that's how the transition is, just with the help of my agent and going to portfolio reviews and everything else.
So you made an interesting point about taking on jobs to make money and because you needed some money. and burn out. That's an interesting observation, because actually because you could never really see that you're heading into burnout because you're working too much, but then it hits you. How did you feel about it from the perspective that you knew you've got your clock counting down and you feel like, I can't work? Did you feel like it was like a double edged, like a double weighted sort of pressure? Like, okay, so I need work, I need to do this, I need to do my visas, and I currently can't feel like I'm actually can do work. That must be quite hard, right?
Yeah, it did feel like I'd wasted a whole year on my visa, but I was like, there's nothing I can do. Like, I can't keep going the way I was going. And I needed to take a step back and assess. And you always think about the worst case. I would just go back to London and figure it out. Like, figured it out going to LA. I could figure it out pretty much anywhere now. I think I've proved to myself that anything is possible is if you're determined enough and if you're passionate enough. But yeah, you do have to take a step back. Like, no good can come of trying to power through burnout. It just makes you worse, and then you can spiral out of control. And
But you said, so how long was your burnout? Because you just mentioned like you feel like you've lost a year. What happened? Like, did you actually, was it that bad? Like, and you feel like you lost a year on your visa, or was it because of like you spend the time working and then time burning out or recovering even?
I think because, yeah, it was towards the end of my first visa, and I knew I had to renew, and I knew I needed more things in my portfolio to show what I've been doing. And I just couldn't really, I was just doing the bare minimum. Like, if someone asked me to shoot, I'd be like, yeah, sure, okay. But I wasn't actively doing what I do on a daily basis, which is try and put myself in everyone's face. But I just needed to, when I say it felt like I'd lost a year, it's just because I'm on this countdown. Like, every day matters until your visa runs out, and you have to make sure that you're doing enough things so that when it comes to renewing, they're going to say yes. But I think once you've got a second renewal, you're in like the what they call the O1 club, which means you're great at what you do, just keep doing it, kind of thing.
It's interesting categories. Like, I mean, I always find with American sort of forms and visas, like especially like the EIN and that kind of stuff, like being the alien, double alien, working for American companies, and it's always like, what form is that? Why is it WA? Just like sometimes I find like the American legal system so confusing, and I'm grateful for the English one, which is not less simple. With the work that you did, it was how much gear as a photographer did you bring with yourself, and how much did you have to rebuild? Because photography is not a cheap profession at all. How did you get your gear going? How did you get all that setup done?
This is actually a funny story. When I kind of was like preparing myself to travel over, my mum said she wanted to come with me because I was flying into Florida first, and I was going to just stay there for a bit, and then before flying to LA. And we've got family in Florida. So she wanted to come with me. I was like, great, you can carry all my hand luggage. I went out and condensed all my kit into a pelly case. And then I had some lighting with me as well. My hand luggage was my camera. My mum's hand luggage was my lighting, which was in this massive backpack. The lights I'd actually leased from a company in the UK. So I leased the lights with the idea I was going to trade them in for newer ones, but they said that there was an option to buy them if I just made the final payment. So I just kept making the payments on I don't even know if I was allowed to take them out of the country, but I did. I was just like, oh, as long as I keep making the payment, they're not going to say anything. So I literally just took my two lights, my camera, lenses, laptop, and some clothes. And my mum helped me bring everything over. And once I got to Florida, I was like, I've got too much stuff for me to carry on my own to LA. So I did it in two parts because I knew I was going back to Florida for Christmas. I went to LA in early November, took half my stuff with me, found an apartment and everything else, then went back to Florida with next to nothing, and then brought the rest of my stuff back over. So I kind of did it in two trips. And then, yeah, once I started figuring out what I needed, the first thing I bought was C-stands because you can't transport them. They're so heavy, and for good reason. So it's almost cheaper to buy new ones than it is to transport them. So I got some C stands. I think I spend my life in Sammy's camera because that's just between Sammy's camera and B&H in New York. That's where all my equipment comes from. So every time I have a new job, I'm like, oh, I need this thing. And I know I'm going to get paid this amount of money so I can afford to buy this new thing.
When you said I spend my life in Sammy's camera, I'm like, what is Sammy's camera? How do you spend a life in there? Now it makes sense because that's a shop, right? And B&H for cigarettes, right?
If you're a photographer, you know B&H in New York is like the biggest superstore of photography, video and everything, audio visual in New York, maybe in the US, I'm not sure. And then Sammy's is the West Coast equivalent.
Oh, amazing. I would have loved to seen the face on a scanner when your lights were going through the baggage checkout, and it's just like your baggage, well, the security check, like there's a light. But yeah, I mean, very shrewd about getting your mum. I've never been a photography mule getting your stuff into the States. But yeah, who knows about the lights? No, who cares? Well, you got them, you paid for them. I like it. I like it. It's just make it scrappy, make it work. That's what I like about your story. That you've made it with the bare minimum, and you just keep adding. I think that's the best beauty of it, because sometimes we tell ourselves like how much ready we need to be, and if you try to make a plan, I think you overthink it. I think that might be the problem. That you're like, oh, I need this, and that's what I need for that, and I know whatever's happening next. Whereas the fact of being edge and £10 in your pocket, and there'll be a party somewhere. Like, obviously that's many years ago, but I think not overthinking it helps you to shed that fear, because when you start thinking, like, oh, how am I going to pay for this? I'm going to pay for that. What's going to happen next? Of course, like you've got that timer ticking in the background all the time. But I think having it sort of part fluid always helps to just open it up and see what happens next. So I think that's really interesting. I don't know what a C stand is, but I'm sure you can tell me.
You've seen them on shoots, those metal stands, and they have like an arm. It's what the lights go on to. They're just really solid and heavy.
Those ones. Yeah. Okay, got it. Yeah, you see, we haven't done a project together for a while, and I've been working with our photographers, so still paying attention. So you built your team. So I'm going to go back to your team, because the photography that you put together is been interesting. Obviously, we did a project over the pond of actually between three different countries, which was inspired by color thesaurus, like a moods of color. Like we wanted to do a project, and one day we'll do the book we keep talking about for a long time. It's about sort of colors and meanings of colors and feelings of colors. And it was inspired around the time when I was working on my second book called Covardias Volume 2, surprise. And there was a project which actually I worked on with an artist from LA. She was a musician. I'm sure she still is a musician. And she was one of those people, I think, originally from Nashville, landed in LA. And we were talking about her album artwork for a campaign, and what she said, she was like, we need to work out what color this is. But what color is this album cover? And I'm like, or this sort of single cover. And I was like, well, there's this thing called synesthesia. Synesthesia is when you see colors when you hear music. And I said, send it to some people and we see what happens. I think I'm yet to find more than one person in my life who genuinely has got synesthesia, like from the friends that I've got in LA. Pretty much everybody else, like everyone you ask, everyone's got synesthesia. Like everyone's like, me, send me the song. And the colors came back wildly different: blue, yellow, green. And she said, oh yeah, it's this guy who I can actually trust. He says it's like a maroon color. It's like a E flat, some sort of chord, like not some sort of scale. It's like, that's what it sounds like. That's what it looks like to him. So that's what we use.
And there's an actor out here, Terrence Howard. I literally watched something on Instagram. I'll send it to you. He talks about the body and how scientists previously thought that electricity governed our way of being, but it's actually frequencies. And those frequencies come in like E flat or B minor or whatever, and those come with colors.
Wow, that's amazing. I need to look it up. Send it over. I will include it in the show notes as well. So yeah, I mean, obviously, as we got to the mutual appreciation of colors, we did a project where you photographed Jessie Larray. Is that? Yeah, for Jessie with your team, like a model, and it was brilliant. Like I think I like the scrappiness, because I think you shot it like in your lounge or in your kitchen or something. Like we just did a bunch on a photo shoot and built sets in 3D as a background and did all of the stuff. I think what was really nice that you can plug it into your team quite quickly. I think even though I'm still in London and, the agility is here, like I found that every time I wanted to work with someone from LA, and I worked with Ellen Hancock in the past, like she's I think quite sort of semi-known model over there. And every time I wanted to do some work years ago, I was like, hey, look, I need you with half makeup, half no, half touched face, whatever. And the photos arrived like the next morning. It was like, how do these people do it? And I just like the scrappiness and actual the sort of agility to actually create something, and actually the drive. And I was really excited. With the word, with the people that you're doing, like how much of a say does anybody have? Do they follow your order? Like, do you direct it all? Or is it collaborative, or how do you guys work?
It depends. So each project's kind of different, but if I've got a really, really strong idea and no one really understands what is going on, then I'll give all the direction. So I did a shoot maybe a year ago, and it's called Crimes Against Women. And I kind of had Jessie again. She's like my little muse. Like she was acting as well as modeling to be three different types of women. And I had to get like hair, makeup, everything, studio, and did all the props myself. But the team they couldn't really see the vision until I had done it. And so I was given a lot of direction. Whereas there's been other projects where I've come up with the mood board. And then because I'm trusting the makeup artist to understand the contours of a model's face, like the idea that I might have might not necessarily work on a specific model that we have. And so I rely on them to adapt and change and kind of tweak the ideas slightly and say, well, what about this? What if we do something like this? And I'm like, yes. Because sometimes it's easier to say yes to something you've seen than to try and explain what you actually want.
That's really interesting because I think with the branding work, I think, for example, like designers were so late to think, oh, we need a mood board for this, because it was like, let me show you what I think. And it was working with photographers before I met you. It was like, oh, there's a mood board. I'm like, oh, what's that? You set it up, and well, I remember like 15 years ago in design, I was like, oh, 20, no, something like that. You're like, hey, I've got a mood board. You're like, what you doing? So let's talk about mood boards for a bit. What excites you? Where do you get your ideas? I'm not going to talk about inspiration. Like, where do you get the excitement? Like, what hits you on the nose? Because you live in a bit of a Disneyland. Let's be honest. Like, things are sort of on steroids, and everyone's pretty and colorful, and everything's loud. And yeah, where does the inspiration for the starting point comes from? And then how do you go and search for those sort of pieces of nuggets that you put together in the final mood board?
I get a lot of my inspiration from music. Again, like I still like, I'm not sure if I have synesthesia, but like music definitely helps me generate a bunch of ideas. And sometimes the ideas are really elaborate, or sometimes they're really simple, or like from film and TV as well. So like some reason I was watching some films from like the 1940s, and I wanted to recreate that kind of lighting for a beauty shoot. I haven't done it yet, but it's one of the mood boards one of the many mood boards that start put together. In terms of like colors and everything, I mean, LA, like it just has such magical light. And then until you're here, like when you're outside and you're taking photographs, everything just pops. Everything is just really bright and colorful. And that's always been my aesthetic, even when I was in the UK. I just couldn't create it enough because my environment was a bit dull and gloomy. So I wasn't necessarily being influenced by my environment, but I found that what I noticed the most was during COVID, I realized I get a lot of my inspiration from talking to people. And I only had the same three people in my house to talk to. And we were driving ourselves crazy. Like, I need more. I need more. I need to be out in the world again. And again, like everyone in COVID was, they were learning new skills and coming up with these masterpieces. And I was just on my balcony drinking white wine from morning to night because I had no inspiration. I was just like, what is this? Well, if the world's going down, I might as well go down with it drunk. So I didn't have any kind of want or need to just set something up at home and do photo shoots at home. I was just like, what do I do? There's nothing here. Like, yeah, I've listened to all the music and everything, but it's like a multitude of different factors that get my inspiration going.
The music part is very like something I can attest to. Not so much these days, but Do you get in a groove? Like when it comes to music, like is it music that's new, music that you know? Is it like, do you find inspiration in stuff that makes you feel something new for the 50th time? Or is it new music? Like how would you say the music is the inspiration?
It's probably not new music. Sometimes it is, but not really.
Is new music to you? That's what I mean. Like, is it new stuff? Because I mean, it could be anything, but for example, it's a 70s music, but you hear it for the first time, or you hear music for, it's a new stuff. So that's what I meant.
Oh, okay. I think it's a combination of songs I've not heard for in a long time. And you're like, oh my God, I forgot about this song. And, it's a song from back in like the 60s or back in the 90s or something. And you're like, oh, wow, I totally forgot about this song. Like, I don't know if you have watched Saltburn, but there's a massive Sophie and Spexter revival.
I think I'm halfway through. Yeah, halfway through last night. Yeah, I'm doing that trick where I just fall asleep halfway through so I watched some of it, but there was some more classics coming through.
Yeah, the songs, I'm just like, oh my gosh, can you remember this? And so there's a bit of nostalgia in there with music in terms of creativity and inspiration. But it's normally some house music because that's what I grew up listening to. All my friends were listening to R&B and hip hop, and I was just went into hard house and soulful house and disco house and all the houses.
When you listen to music, is it stylistically? Do you think about you might have sort of, let's say, you might have a synesthesia, so you think about sort of theme, but does it give you idea of a shape, of a color, about sort of mood? I mean, because you talked about lighting from a 1940s or 60s movie, and how do you put it together? Like, what sort of, I can't relate to it because my ideas are like, I can put them together, but you need people and cameras and staff and all of that. So how do you get that spark and where does it go next? What do you see?
It's quite funny because when I have done a couple of test shoots, sometimes it's really hard for me to get images to the team because in my head, I've seen it maybe 5 or 6 times. So I see the image before it's created, and then I see the image again while I'm trying to put the mood board together. And then I see the image while I'm shooting. I see the image after I'm shooting. I see the image again when I'm going through my selects and figuring out which one is which. And then when it comes to retouch, I've seen it again. So that's 6 times. And then by that time, I'm bored and I'm like, oh, I didn't do a good job. And then it's almost like I have to wait for feedback to come in, or I have to leave it alone for a bit, go and shoot something else, and then come back to it and be like, oh, I did this. That was actually really great. Because I don't know, I get a bit fatigued from looking at my own work for too long. And so I'm constantly coming up with new images and wanting to shoot new things.
It's very interesting you say that because you sometimes you feel like what you create, I think you need that time to absorb it because you need to digest it because I think it happens to lots of people who go like, and I think it happens in any client presentation, especially if you don't give them the work, the creativity in advance. You go like, well, I don't like it today. And then you go and do another 7 different things. And then you come back to the first one because everyone realized, actually, you know what, we had it. We just didn't give it enough time to actually ferment and sink into our minds properly because I think that's what it is because it's amazing then to come back to something, all right, we've did a good job. We've done a good job. And especially if you're busy for years and years and years and you look back and some of it's a bit shit. You're like, yeah, like, I think we didn't really sort of like hit that well. But I worked with someone, I had a great creative partnership with a 3D artist for 5 or 6 years. And Thomas was on the team that we used for our collaboration. And we did hundreds of pieces of work every year because it was just like, it was fluid, it was daily, like it was a full-time collaboration. And only when we've all changed what we wanted to do and we went our sort of separate ways and I've changed my style of work, only then I could actually appreciate with a distance of time of what's gone into it. Of course, some of the stuff was a bit like too rushed, was got like, you were tests and compositions and stuff, but some of the things were like, oh my God, I wish I could actually slow down and enjoy it a bit more because I'm a big believer of saying like own it and enjoy it. Do it that way. Like, no, this is your process. Grab it by the horns. Look into what you can do. Like, look at options. Like, whatever. Like, explore it. Because my new favorite quote is: "No risk, no story." If you don't put yourself out there, you might never find out. But when you're risking it all, you are so preoccupied and sort of was disrupted by these sort of outside elements going, I've got so many things to look out for. I need to pay everyone. I need to get paid. I need to get the client. Everyone needs to be happy. We need to get all the work. And it just is this big melee. And also then you get life and family and time and sleep and energy and exercise. What's sliver of your day is actually to sit down and say, I can focus on this. I can actually appreciate what I've been doing, because I think what we've created for ourselves is that we've got the most amazing technology we've ever had. We've got the most amazing abilities to do things. You can learn about things. And then you start thinking about the survival mode. Have I made enough money to do this? Or have not, is this right? And kind of, we don't necessarily have that time to actually sit down and digest. And that's the sort of sit down and digest, I think, are the true word. Does it happen often to you that you look back? Because, yeah, your process is long. Like to get something across the line can be a long and creative situation. And you get people who want to do lots of quick jobs because that's exciting, but then they get really bored of the quick jobs. They wish they had a long job, and they have a long job and that's just too long. So they're bored again. So there's like never the happy medium. So how do you find this? Like, how do you find a problem? Like, do you ever set yourself down to actually let something like sit and mature before you sort of review it? Or do you sometimes have to go quickly with the time? And how do you remedy that? Because when you get bored, what do you do?
First of all, I'm a firm believer in you need time to get bored. You really do. That's where some of the best ideas come out of. Like for me, especially, like if I'm really, really super bored and there's like nothing to do, or if I'm traveling through Thailand, I'm on a bus for 9 hours, I can just stare out the window. Like your mind starts to relax, and then slowly but surely, these little nuggets of information come in, and then you write them down in your notes, or you see something, you're like, oh my God, that's an idea for a shoot. Like my notes in my phone, I've got like one that's just all these ideas for photo shoots that I want to do. And I find it really helpful to have, so that when a client comes to me, so I think one of my first shoots in LA was a client that came to me for some sunglasses. They had a whole idea plan how they wanted to do it. I didn't really like it. And I was like, what if we did something like this? It's a lot simpler. And I just pulled out this mood board that I'd already created, and they absolutely loved it. So I feel like, yeah, you need time to get bored. And what I tend to do is sometimes if I'm doing a project and I know it needs to be out, I just try and suck it up and focus and just go through the images, just pick out the best ones. And usually, because I've done it enough times, it's like a muscle. You kind of get going.
That's interesting that you say you need time to get bored by you looking out a window in Thailand for 9 hours. I mean, it's not exactly being bored, is it? It's more like I actually had time to unplug, because that's too much information, I think. Because I mean, I'm trying to work out what people say when you say get bored, because you can't be bored because you're in Thailand. You're not exactly on a school trip. You're not even needing to pay attention, because I just always find like being bored is just, that's really the pits. It's like, I've got nothing to do. There's nothing interesting. There's nothing boring. There's nothing of my interest. And I think it's just that like we need to absorb our surroundings. And I think it's just maybe like having a lack of active task that we need to do, because that's one of the things. Like I think I saw you tweeting the other day, like, let's agree that all the best ideas are in the shower. Is that what you put? I don't know. I've been off Instagram for, yeah, where was it? Threads, crikey. Where did I end up? Like, I try to avoid most of the stuff most of the time, but it's what everyone tells themselves, because you unplug, because you might not be thinking about invoices in the shower. You're like, you know what? I'm here to do something different. And there's so many mindful exercises where actually you can actually focus your mind on like, okay, I'm drying my hand, I'm drying my arms, I'm drying my shoulders. Like literally you can just focus on actually what we do, because we're lucky when we find ourselves in the shower thinking about the good stuff, because most of the time you might be catastrophizing. You might be going, shit, this is all scary. The clock is ticking. I've got no work. There's like the sea stance. I need to get more of those, being silly. It's unplugging. I think this is what happens also with our client work. They almost stand in the shower for a bit, go, you know what? That first idea was really good. Oh, I should have agreed to this. Or now this makes sense. Or it's all these things that sometimes we are so misaligned with the work, or because where we are personally, because from your personal experiences, I'm sure you can tell that there are certain things that you do now, which you wouldn't think you would be doing 20 years ago or 10 years ago. And I think this is that sort of beautiful way of just us maturing and going and having these different experiences that shape us, that sort of give us these new perspectives and these different understandings. And you're like, maybe I could have listened a bit better. Maybe I could have understood this better. Maybe I was like, you know what, I'm going to try this. And actually, I'm going to give myself a pat on the back for this because I've done some really good work and I didn't really appreciate it. Because if you go into this way of the strive that you and I have, people like us, you're never really happy until you realize that you've passed that peak. And you're like, oh, you know what? That was really good. And I didn't really appreciate that moment. And it's just like, how do you condition yourself to actually appreciate the small wins? Because there could be so many different factors in the play. And that doesn't always happen. We don't always give ourselves that space to celebrate. That makes sense. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. So when I say bored and I'm on a bus in Thailand, it's because I I haven't pulled out a book to occupy my time. It's like I've got no Wi-Fi on my phone to look at the internet while I'm on this bus. I'm literally just choosing to just stare out the window and just observe the world go by kind of thing. And that's kind of what I try to do on a weekly basis. Not stare out the window, but I give myself Friday. So on a Friday, that's the day where I don't have to work. I don't have to do anything that anyone's asking me to do unless I really want to. And it's my day to, I'm not a good drawer, but I'll get out a sketchbook and just get some crayons and just, I'll do something, or I'll try and learn something on Procreate on my iPad, or I'll put together some mood boards, or I'll color in my coloring book, or I'll learn the new prompts on Midjourney. Like that's my day to just flush out the crap and just see what happens. And it could turn into something, or it's just not. At least I'm not just watching Netflix and going, "Why haven't I got any jobs in?" That's my day to soak up some more, or go to a exhibition or a gallery or something. It's every Friday is my non-work day. So if you're trying to email me on a Friday and I respond, great. If I don't respond, I'm not. You can wait till Monday.
Is that what happened? Is that what happened with this conversation? I emailed you on a Friday.
Maybe.
Yeah, I love that. I love that you have a day to ring fence just for these little experiments. I think that's amazing to have. Just going back to that board thing, I've got two young children and they're like, they can be busy for hours. They finish this and go, I'm bored. I'm like, dude, you just spend hours drawing all over the house. Can you be happy for 1 second? But it's great. It could be seen as a negative. But I'm like, you know what? That means you're looking for something else. Like you want to do something like some other challenge. And I think that when we retain that, when we sort of sometimes rediscover that in our lives, you know what? I want to learn about that new thing or Procreate. I want to learn about the crayons and like experiment things. And that's why I find kids amazing because you're like, oh, let's splatter lots of acrylic paint all around the house because, that's what we've got today and see how things are working. It's nice to have that little window into things. And I think that's really good. Sometimes, like in corporate roles, you might not really get. So what's the plan for next? Obviously, I know that I think you mentioned the green card's finally coming, but work-wise, what's your mood boards? Like, do you have a storage of the ideas and you go right in 2 years, let's say there was a mood board from 2 years ago and you realize, oh, that was actually a really good idea. Do you have a storage and where does it take you for the future?
I do have a whole plethora of mood boards on my Dropbox. It depends. It depends on whether my agent is just like, "Oh, what have you got? I need some new images," and she's going to shoot something, and I'm like, "Oh, okay. What do I shoot?" And then I go look into my mood board and try and either shoot something seasonal or relevant, or just something I really enjoy. I'm doing a collaboration with Leica Camera, and I'm going to be featured in their gallery in March, and that's something I'm finishing off this week before my other work commitments. But in terms of what's really next is, I know we spoke about doing this book on colors, but I've got some more ideas I'm going to talk to you offline about because I think I've worked out how we can put it together. And I'm definitely going to need your help because I've not published a book before. And like I've got ideas on how big I want to make it and what to do and the layout. Yeah, it's a whole thing. But yeah, that's something I really want to work on. I absolutely love learning about color, and I've been a bit apprehensive on approaching companies like Pantone because I wanted to do stuff with them. And I just love like how organized their color system is. And it's just, yeah. The whole thing.
If there's anything I've learned about getting approached by big companies is when you show them what you can do before they approach you. Because I remember putting it on exhibition and I wanted to work with Apple. I was like, give me 20 iPods for my show. And they're like, who are you? What do you want? I've never heard of you. Like, obviously no one ever replied. But it was like when you flip the scale, it's okay, you know what? This is what I'm doing. This is what we're doing. We've proven the concept. You're like, oh, hello. What can we do with you? You know, like, again, it's just when you reply more than once, you know, when you're like, hey, this is me. This is what I'm doing. Hey, I'm still doing this. You should be paying attention. And you just keep going. And I said this quote in my first podcast with Kyle. It was like, be so good that they can't ignore you. It's that quote, just believing in what you do, going with it, sticking to your guns, have this unwavering sort of tenacity going, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to risk it. I'm going to have a story to tell. And someone's going to pay attention very quickly, very soon to what I'm doing. And I think this is where you headed. Yeah, I can tell you more about it, you know, the color workshops I'm doing at the moment and stuff. But yeah, I'm happy, you know, make a book about all of this because, yeah, we need to make it happen. It's just a bit of a nightmare making big books. So I can give you some advice on how not to make an oversized book, which is a nightmare to post. But hey, we could be having this conversation for a long time and I think we should continue offline. Thanks for coming on today and sharing your story because the reason why I want to talk to you about your LA story and, you know, what you've been doing and where you've come from and how you're doing this, because it hopefully could be useful to someone knowing what they can do or how they can be an alien of distinction. Is that right? Alien of distinction?
Alien of extraordinary ability.
Alien of extraordinary ability, which I can't even pronounce. Yeah, I just hope that people find a value in this because what you've done, you've proven it's possible to do. And you can enjoy it, you can make the right contacts, you can pursue your dream and mainly pursue that amazing sunshine. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, it's been emotional. Just touching onto your point, like literally anything is possible. We hold ourselves back a lot. And what you said earlier about just starting, it literally is that. Like there's so many things I've started and I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just doing it. And sometimes it leads into something great and sometimes it doesn't. And if I want Pantone to see what I'm doing, cool. It's not, all right, I'm still doing it anyway, kind of thing. It's worth doing for yourself more than for anyone else. So yeah.
Amazing. Thanks for coming on the show. Nice to have you on.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Creativity for Sale podcast. The show was produced and presented by me, Radim Marnich. Editing and audio production was masterfully done by Neil Mackay from 7 Million Bikes Podcasts. Theme music was written and produced by Robert Summerfield. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support the podcast, please subscribe and leave a rating or review. To get your own action plan on how to start and grow a life-changing creative business, you can get a copy of Creativity for Sale book via the links in show notes. As always, keep those creative fires burning, and until next time, I'm Radim Marnich, your guide through this exploration of passion, creativity, innovation, and the boundless potential within us all.